No intro, Taylor. We're just off and running here. Welcome into a Patriots Beat, Patriots Daily crossover. Special midweek crossover because Brian Hines out today. So it's the three of us, Alex Barth, Taylor Kyles, Mike Kadlick with you. I think Taylor's the only one who hasn't missed a show now, right? All summer?
Yeah. Mr. Consistent over here.
Yeah. There you go. Showing up, not getting Wally pipped. We're coming to you after the Patriots 17th. That's right, 17th training camp practice of the summer. We are winding things down here. They only have one more. Some people consider training camp ending, with the last preseason game. Some people consider it ending with roster cuts. I do think they are going to have, I believe their schedules for them to have one or two practices between their preseason finale on Thursday and their roster cuts. So some gray area there, but as training camp winds down, we do still have some things to talk about. Today's practice, like we've seen, and like usually happens with training camp winding down, you get the scout team out there. You got guys working off cards. You're getting ready for week one already in the Raiders. So not a wire-to-wire evaluation practice like some of the ones earlier in the summer, but we did get a few periods of 1-versus-1s, full tempo, including what's kind of become the standard now, way to end practice, throw a minute or so on the clock, a little more, a little less, put the ball around the 50 and let them go at each other. And once again, the offense came up short. They actually got two drives today, one with 55 seconds, one with 40 seconds. One was really sloppy, included a sack, a missed throw, finished with an interception by Robert Spillane. The other one, Drake Maye kind of nickel and dimed his way down the field a little bit, but ultimately came up short, multiple incompletions near the goal line. I think, Taylor, me and you were trying to figure this out in the notes. I think they just finished on third down and then didn't kick the field goal, but maybe was a field goal situation. So potentially, technically a successful drive if they were looking for a field goal, but even to get down there was a bit of work. Once again, the offense struggles in the most real game-like situations created in these practices. Taylor, what did you make of today's issues, and are you worried big picture?
I don't want to worry big picture because it is still so early. And I think that, so after especially the Vikings game where you're seeing, it looks like Drake Maye's holding on to the football, had some deep opportunities, and Josh McDaniels was dialing up downfield concepts for Drake to kind of play to that aggressiveness. And it felt like there were times where he didn't really feel comfortable just letting it rip. Now, there's also the point that we know a big point of emphasis has been making sure that Drake isn't throwing into bad windows and is protecting the football and all that. So if this is just, the rocky phase, we knew it wasn't going to be perfect. Like, progress isn't always linear. Sometimes there's going to be regression, and hopefully he learns from this. I would say, though, it's still maybe not important, but it's interesting. And today, though, was a little bit different because we always have the caveat in practice of that's the place to make mistakes. You don't know what they're being told day to day. That's fair. But when Drake is missing guys by yards, and when he is like one of the interceptions by Robert Spillane was a great play by him. He got beat by Hunter Henry on a back shoulder like a few plays earlier. Read it perfectly the next time. It wasn't a perfect throw, but it was still catchable. Robert Spillane capitalized. That I'm not going to give Drake a lot of crap for. But the interception where he just kind of threw it over the middle and we didn't know who he was throwing to, and Robert Spillane just went up and caught it, like that was discouraging. And the fact that the downfield passing game was completely out of sync. Like you said, there was Thinkin and Duncan, but he wasn't on the same page. And even Mike Vrabel, this is the second time that I've noticed him make comments about the offense's lack of sync. He did it after the Commanders game. He said, we just want to get into more of a rhythm, which you understood because of the circumstances of the game. Then you had that really weird 2-minute situation before they went to Minnesota. And now it's becoming a theme where they're not really doing too well in these end of half situations. And he mentioned the throw to Pop in the game where, we have to be on the same page. So I'm not hitting any panic button. Like, we know that September is a time where you kind of start to find your groove, but they need to improve right now because the passing game, the pass protection looks a little shoddy at times. And I just feel like they don't always know where guys are going to settle in. Drake doesn't look super comfortable right now. So it's not a nothing burger for sure.
I think that's the good way to put it, Taylor, is he doesn't look comfortable. And this 2-minute end of half, end of game offense that Josh McDaniels has run with Tom Brady for so long, it's almost like Brady would drop back early, take what he can get, dump off, whether it's a screen, whether it's a short throw, get a couple of yards, get comfortable, and then they would hit a shot play here, hit a shot play there, put themselves in field goal range, boom, bang, bang, boom, field goal, win, tie, what have you. Today was just spray miss to Hunter Henry. Looked like a clear miscommunication where Henry went inside, Drake threw away outside. Then he got sacked on the next play by Harold Landry. Third play, he threw it up to Kayshon Boutte and kind of just was looking to give him a chance. And Alex Austin made a nice play. And then he throws the interception. And that one was out the window almost immediately. 55 seconds gone, throws the pick. Then the second one, yes, it was a little bit better. I think he found Mac Hollins once or twice, who I thought Hollins was probably their best, most reliable receiver, at least today. You didn't see much from Diggs. You didn't see much from Pop Douglas. And so I just feel like Maye does not feel comfortable in these situations in this offense that they're trying to run. Now, yes, it's early. So yes, that I guess can be a caveat, but at the same time, it's early, but you're also several weeks in, and you do have a game coming up in 3 short weeks. And if you do get into the situation, you want to be able to run that smoothly. And that's something that Drake Maye is going to want to have to do. They're going to want to have to do with this offense. So it was a bummer. I think the protection, Taylor, you said, was shoddy too. That first play that Drake had the miscommunication, some people thought that could have even been a sack. So 2 sacks in a row right off the bat. It just needs to be better. And it's something that they really do have to hone in on and work on over these next couple weeks.
The time's kind of running down for that, right? And is this something where when they get into regular season games, like how confident are this is the big thing with Drake Maye. I mean, it's the turnovers, and he had no game-winning drives last year. This was talked about quite a bit, that there was the one in Tennessee that probably should have been. But besides that, obviously the inability late in those games to bring the Patriots back. Does this concern you big picture for the Patriots?
Well, you mentioned the Tennessee game last year too. Like, he did go down there and tie the game. And then when he had the chance again in overtime, he throws an interception and he throws it across the middle.
Well, let's also remember that the coaching staff picked the wrong way with the wind on the kickoff.
Okay.
Let's also point out the fact that on that crazy long play that is awesome because he completed it, he missed Hunter Henry, who was wide open. He also missed Kendrick Bourne for a potential score because he underthrew it. So, like, yes, we all remember the Ramondre Stevenson play, but I distinctly remember when we did the film review, Mike, I was like, I think he could have just hit Hunter Henry in rhythm.
And then he kept out of bounds and he had to wave him off.
Exactly. So, even when he's done well, there definitely is a little bit of, I don't want to say like the game's too big for him, and he's relatively inexperienced. He only started 2 years in college versus a Jaden Daniels who had so much time to really find his groove and get comfortable in the college game, especially in the SEC, before he got to the NFL. So again, man, we're still talking about the offseason. And even if September, if he struggles, but then it clicks in October, we're talking about, oh, look how much he grew. So it's not like it's the end of the road. This is a sophomore quarterback, but it's something where we have not seen him improve. And that part of it definitely is significant and something we need to monitor from week to week and practice to practice, while giving the practices the grain of salt that they deserve. Because this is a defense that they play against every week. A 2-minute offense is this big. So you have to also think about that. Like, when you're throwing at the same defense, they know that you want to get the dink and the dunk and then hit the whole shot. And when your only, downfield threat is Pop or Travion Henderson, they know where to key in on. Like the drive where Marcus Jones had 2 pass breakups against Pop in a row. It just felt like he knew it was coming. So that's a part of what we should acknowledge. But if they get into games and he doesn't have the confidence because he isn't able to execute in practice and because he doesn't have a history of success, maybe that may be a bigger issue. But I still want to, pepper on some grains of salt, although still interesting.
What you Spillane? So Spillane had that one pick we kind of touched on there of Drake Maye. Had the other one, which I just thought was like you said, Taylor. I thought was a really good play by him. Anything more on his day today?
I didn't. I mean, those were really the 2 ones. I don't know, Mike.
Those are the 2 plays. I guess just like I think you probably don't read into this that much because I don't think Spillane's ultimately the answer for covering tight ends. But they go to Minnesota, covering tight ends or struggling to cover tight ends is one of the big stories about that, about those joint practices. And then here comes Robert Spillane intercepting one pass intended for a tight end, likely forcing incompletion on another. Again, probably not the answer there, but I just
a schematic note actually.
Yeah, go for it.
One, I will give Robert Spillane credit. He also tackled Mike Vrabel while they were running to the other end of the field. Vrabel was ahead of everybody, and Spillane comes in like a freaking missile. Didn't take him to the ground, but he tagged him. But in all seriousness, a scheme thing that I've noticed from this defense that I do not love, and I tweeted this a couple days ago, I'm seeing a lot of tight ends on or linebackers on tight ends and safeties on slot receivers. I asked Jabril Peppers about it, and he kind of acknowledged, they're quicker and all those things. I hate that because when the Patriots signed Jabril Peppers, I made fun of the Giants for sticking him on Cooper Kupp and acting like that was okay and acting like that was normal. That's crazy. And whenever Bill Belichick ran, even last year when they ran that big nickel defense with 3 safeties, they almost never played man coverage because they would just play different types of zones where you didn't know who was dropping. Sometimes it would be inverted to one side. And that's how they would kind of keep you on your toes, knowing that you don't want, if you are going to beef up against guys that are more athletic because you want to defend the run, but still keep some athleticism, you can't put Jabril Peppers in a spot where he's got to cover a legitimate slot receiver. So some of the matchups that I see in this defense, I don't love. Hoping it's a preseason experiment. How many times have we seen Bill Belichick do inexplicable shit? And then after a couple weeks, he's like, yeah, that didn't make sense. We're going to toss it. So I hope it's an experiment. And Robert Spillane is better suited than most linebackers of his physical skill set to be in those one-on-one situations. But if I see Robert Spillane, up against athletic young guys, like if he's on Brock Bowers, I'm going to lose my mind. So we'll bookmark that because some of these scheme matchups, man-to-man coverage, I have not been a fan of.
I'll just add this just for the definition. I feel like we use this term a good amount. A spray, I don't know if this is an official term. It's something I'd heard before I started covering the Patriots. And Mike, I think I've heard you use it. Essentially a non-competitive throw from the quarterback that's not intentional throwaway. A throw that really doesn't have a chance to be completed, but isn't something you didn't throw it that way on purpose. That's
Which
so,
is so fun
like a
with
spray chart. Like a quarterback spray chart, they're everywhere. He just kind of threw it and the ball was just sprayed. Like he had no idea where it went.
Right. So that's what that means. Mike, you were going to say something?
Just the Spillane story is cool in general. I know we probably touched on it a few weeks ago, but when he went on with Bussin' with the Boys here too, where, he's been cut several times. He links back up here with Mike Vrabel. It's cool to see him make plays as an athletic linebacker who is also, Taylor, you said, like, not buddy with Vrabel, but kind of on Vrabel's good side and knows how to, draw with him or whatever. Like it's cool. Someone who was undrafted out of Western Michigan to be making plays in the league. And after being doubted before, being able to do it now, it's good stuff from him. So it's good to see him make plays. And I think especially Taylor, when we were live, when they signed him, we were like, okay, this, we'll see what this fit can be if he can stick around, but he's going to be a good player. And he is clearly their best linebacker right now.
Also love how he gave the Steelers a piece of his mind when they invited him and then didn't give him a real tryout. He's like, why the hell did you do this? And then wound up getting signed. Like, that's a baller story. I've never heard that before.
All right. So, again, not the most competitive practice. Those were kind of the couple competitive periods we saw today. But with the scout team, you see the first team offense, so there still is some usage stuff in there. The big story to me, Jared Wilson back with the top offense at left guard. So, because he played in the game on Saturday, I think some people thought maybe he got benched. I wonder if he got hurt Wednesday, couldn't practice Thursday. Maybe they did some install type stuff on Thursday to get ready for the game. That's why he was demoted, because he's healthy enough to play, but maybe wasn't fully filled in on the offense. Fully back with the starters today. So he still looks in place, although Mike Vrabel was asked about the left guard position today, and he brought up unprompted that they're kind of still figuring out center too. So I wonder if Jared Wilson getting some center snaps in that game. He didn't get any today, but if maybe the door's still open for him to play center, if they're not happy with Bradbury, we have continued to see Ben Brown rep at left guard. The other offensive line note for me today, Cole Strange, 2 bad snaps, botched a under center quarterback exchange with Josh Dobbs, and then was high and to the right, I think, of Drake Maye on a shotgun snap. So that's kind of the big picture. I guess let's start with Jared Wilson, Mike. Do you still think he's penciled in as that starting left guard, or is there really a left guard competition still going on?
I think pencil's the way to do it, where, it's his. They can erase it if they want to rather quickly. They're still trying to figure it out, which, I don't love. I think it is kind of a bummer that we're now a few weeks into camp and they still haven't really fully solidified that interior. Now, some of it is just because for lack of a better term, they're not that good there right now. Like Garrett Bradbury is somebody who has struggled throughout training camp. You don't know if they want to move off of him necessarily. It was noteworthy that Vrabel did mention mention center in that conversation today. I do think it's ultimately going to be him, and I do think it's going to be Wilson at left guard. That was a good way to kind of look at it, Alex, where he was injured, so they put Ben Brown in there. Then the next day comes out, he looks okay, but they just said, let's just go through with this. Then this gives us an opportunity now that Wilson's feeling better. He mentioned today that it was an ankle that was bothering him, and he spoke a little bit, said that his ankle's feeling okay. It was just another bump and bruise that kind of kept him out. So Long story short, I do think he's going to end up being their left guard. And, if he does take these next couple weeks, take the center reps with the second team, Garrett Bradbury does continue to struggle. Maybe they flip it around. I think they're still keeping that, open. But, if push comes to shove, I do think it's going to be Jared Wilson and Will Campbell. An interesting left side because it's obviously, the two rookies that are going to have to man the blind side for Drake Maye.
Taylor, where are you at with Jared Wilson? Also with Garrett Bradbury? He hasn't really moved since the start of camp, but Vrabel's saying there might be a competition. Is he just talking about backups, or is there another shoe to drop here that we haven't seen yet?
I think it's significant that we saw multiple permutations of center left guard combos. Like when I did my write-up, I was just thinking all right, who's going to win left guard? But as I watched, especially because Jared Wilson worked with different center tackle combinations. So it's clear they were trying to see what these different things looked like. I will say when Jared Wilson, when I thought he was benched, it was because he didn't play great against the Commanders. I thought he had the first 2 or 3 plays, he had pretty glaring mental mistakes. The biggest one was the screen to Travion Henderson, where if he makes his one block or stays on his guy, Travion Henderson has a ton of room to work. Also the twist, obviously. And then in practice, we didn't really see that improve. Still saw that as a bit of an issue. So I was I wasn't really surprised that Ben Brown was in there. As we know now, injury maybe had something to do with it. I wonder if there also was a little bit of performance involved because one, you could see it on the tape. It was not a great first game from Jared Wilson. But when I asked him today what he thought he improved from that first game to this one, he acknowledged that he saw the field better and that things kind of slowed down for him, which was obvious. I think because when I looked at the tape from the Vikings, way better. You saw him sniffing out all these line games the way he did in college, looked a lot more comfortable. There were some clean misses, he wound up on the ground on a reach block near the goal line. He kind of lunged and got his hands beat for a quick loss in pass protection. Those are correctable things for a rookie. I'm not going to freak out about them, but I liked seeing and it definitely feeling like the game had slowed down for him. Now, I was saying after the game, I would like to see what he can do back home at center and then maybe have Cole Strange at guard because I thought he had a pretty good game where he didn't get walked back as much as I typically expect him to, and he also was pretty good sniffing out all the things that the Vikings were throwing at them. So I'd like to see Wilson and Cole Strange, maybe even Ben Brown at guard because he had some clean losses as well. But when I've looked at the totality of his preseason tape, he hasn't been terrible. And if you're talking about a competition, so to get to Garrett Bradbury, I'm worried about him because every week we see him get walked into the quarterback. And it's one thing where he fights, right? It's not like he's literally getting dog walked and put on complete skates, but it's the, give an inch, give an inch, give an inch. My fear is at some point, if that's a consistent thing, Drake Maye is going to follow through and hit his hand on Garrett Bradbury's helmet, and then we're going to have a much bigger problem, right? Now, every center gets beat, but when you have a center who's getting beat the same way every time he goes up against a certain caliber of player, that's going to be a problem, especially with your young franchise quarterback. So I love what Garrett Bradbury does as a run blocker. He's got some mean blocks. He's good on outside zone, a big reason for their success. But I think his issues in pass protection are significant and bigger than what you would get with Jared Wilson or Ben Brown in the middle. So I think Garrett Bradbury is going to be the center, and I think they're going to keep Jared Wilson at left guard and see how that works out until Bradbury forces them to bench him. But I got to say, I'm more hesitant than I've ever been now that I'm actually seeing it in this system and Bradbury just not being able to hold his ground the way you would need for a guy to step up in the quarterback with comfort.
I just think the question is, if it's not Bradbury, then who? That's where it gets tricky because
Jared Wilson with Brown or Strange at guard.
I think that Jared Wilson, you got to start repping. I'm with you. Mm-hmm. I said this in the beginning. I want Jared Wilson to play center, but he's got to be doing it. I don't think, I think it would be a little reckless to drop him in there week one after it really hasn't played center with Drake Maye. Did a little bit with the backups, but after he hasn't played center with Drake Maye, it'll have been about a month. I think over a month by that point, by the time they're playing their week one game.
Better get going.
So, that's what I'm saying. We did this last year, and it's not quite as bad as it was last year, but it's starting to remind me a little bit of last year and Jared Wilson said this after practice, all 5 of those guys, whoever the 5 are, all 5 of those guys got to be able to operate as one mind, right? Mm-hmm. 5 guys, same set of eyes, yep. Dante Scarnecchia. You can't do that the first time you play together. That's about continuity, and time's kind of running out if you want to build that continuity. So maybe this is the group they're sticking with, and they're not going to move them, but if there is a chance that they see Garrett Bradbury as not being the guy, you got to get Wilson or whoever in there now. And I don't think it's Cole Strange. I know you're a big Cole Strange guy, Taylor. Those snaps today worried me. I do not think he's
Oh,
had a
no,
good
I'm saying
summer.
Cole Strange at guard. Cole Strange at guard.
Okay, so I think Ben Brown's clearly ahead of him in that regard, but that's a closer competition. But you got to get going now if you want to move Jared Wilson to center. So even though I want to see it, even though it's what I think makes more sense, just doing the objective, what do we think they are going to do? Clock's pretty close to midnight on that one. And at this point, I wonder if they're just going to let Garrett Bradbury start the season and see how it goes from there. And I say that, like, that's not necessarily what I would do. I would have had Jared Wilson working through the snap issues since the start of camp, or I would have kept David Andrews, as the commenter points out.
Open up that can of worms.
Well, you could have still drafted Jared Wilson. Like, that's kind of what I thought they were going to do. And then you'd have the whole Georgia pipeline. It would have been nice and tight. But they got to, if they want to do that, they got to get Jared
When
Wilson.
did they sign Bradbury? At what point did they sign Bradbury? It wasn't after the draft, right?
No, it was before the draft. It was after they cut Andrews. It was like, I think the second week of free agency, because he got cut, I think, after the new league year. And then he was
that's
right. For
like
that
sounds right. Okay.
And the Patriots signed him.
Because you did kind of replace an old injured David Andrews with an old declining Garrett Bradbury. And it's like, if you were going to move on from one guy, let's bring in a rookie and start. You mentioned the pipeline, start another guy and let him be the long-term answer instead of just having another small stopgap, which it might not even be a season-long stopgap if Bradbury keeps on this pace. Eventually, you're going to turn to Wilson. Why not turn it over sooner rather than later? It's not like you're trying.
Maybe they didn't feel like they could bench Andrews midseason. And they kind of knew that was going to be a thing. But again, if the plan is for Jared Wilson to take over at some point this year, he's got to start getting those center snaps sooner rather than later.
Right. And we can agree or disagree, but we mentioned this in practice. There was also a very clear motivation for Mike Vrabel to move on from their Super Bowl champions, their old captains. Not all of them, obviously. Like Jabril Peppers, a former captain, is still here. Right. But we can disagree. But it felt like Mike Vrabel wanted his guys to establish his culture.
Yeah, it was a culture thing.
You have David Andrews, like one of the core tenets of that the later success that the Patriots had in the later 2010s or whatever. I don't know what year it is. But, we could disagree, but it felt like that was something that was on the top of their mind. And we also, we have no idea what David Andrews would have looked like. He was declining. People always say that Bradbury wasn't good one-on-one. Neither was David Andrews. We kind of whispered it because nobody wanted to poo-poo the guy because it felt like he wasn't playing up to his standard. But, we should acknowledge that, yes, maybe Bradbury isn't doing as much, but we have no idea if David Andrews would have been capable of doing much better.
We'll just bring it back to the current team. And again, the big point here, that's a little bit of revisionist history. The big point here is if they think Jared Wilson is going to play center at some point this year, even if it's not week one, he's probably got to get going sooner rather than later in that regard. The other note from practice today, just some injury updates on guys that got hurt during the game. No Efton Chisholm on the field. He was, as Mike Reese pointed out, riding the exercise bike, riding it pretty vigorously. So, yeah, that's the word.
That's how I ride my bike. Isn't that how you guys ride your bike?
So
with vigor?
Not maybe much concern there. Kyle Williams, still no update. Isaiah Aiton to IR. He also said Kendrick Bourne is not going to return to practice this week. Christian Gonzalez, to me, I'll see you week one. I don't really care. Yeah. Obviously, I hope he's healthy. I don't really care in terms of I don't know how much he needs to face the Giants in week 3 of the preseason to prepare. I think as long as he's physically healthy, whatever's going to get him, the freshest and the most ready to go for week 1, I don't need to see him on the field. Kendrick Bourne's in an interesting spot because he is competing for one of those roster spots. I think Chisholm's probably okay, should be okay, even though he's going to miss this week. Certainly helped himself plenty with that game that he had.
Did he earn bubble wrap status, you think? Not that that's what's happening, but do you think he earned it?
Well, by now he kind of has it by default because he actually is hurt. So,
yeah. But if he was healthy and they just pulled him because they were like, hey, you did well, would you want to see more of him? Or do you think he deserves a spot?
I still want to see him with Drake Maye. If they're just going to put him out there with Josh Dobbs, I'd be fine, especially considering the way Josh Dobbs has been throwing the football. But if you told me Drake Maye is going to get one series and Efton Chisholm's going to be on the field just to see what their chemistry is, I would not be opposed to that. Yeah, I'd be a little opposed to playing Drake Maye in this game in theory, but anyway, Bourne's still fighting. Although I do wonder if the 2 IR spots have materialized. So for people who missed this last year, it used to be if you wanted to put a player on IR to start the season, he had to make your initial 53. You would have make that 4 p.m. cut down, and then the team could put you on IR in order for you to be eligible to return. Now, starting last year, you get 2 players. They have to be put on IR on cutdown day. You can't do it sooner. They have to be put on IR on cutdown day. And then you have to designate them at that time to return. And then it's the minimum 4 weeks before they can return things, just like regular IR or PUP or whatever. So you can't put like 4 guys on IR and say, we'll wait and see which 2 we want. You have to dedicate those 2 right away. And that may save Kendrick Bourne's spot in New England, because he seems like a very clear candidate. You IR him. He's going to miss the first 4 weeks. You sort everything out with the rest of the position. If everybody's good, maybe you leave him on there. If you suddenly need a receiver, you have him there. He's familiar with the quarterback. He's familiar with the offense. And then I think the other guy is Jelani Tavai, who continues to miss time. And I don't know that there's another clear candidate, honestly, in that group pending an injury on Thursday night. I don't know how many players who you would keep in that sense are even going to be playing on Thursday night. Really, the only other guy who's banged up is Jalen Polk.
That was going to be my thought. Do you do it with Polk, or is he a full-year IR candidate at this point?
I think
he's a full-year IR candidate or a cut candidate, honestly.
Yeah.
So
I think if you can IR him, that's your best case scenario. Like, you don't have to get rid of the second round pick. Maybe he can just kind of cool it, not be in front of the media all the time where he has to answer all the questions about why he's not doing well. Why is he buried on the depth chart? Just let the dude get comfortable in this scheme, like learn the offense, and then come out next year, guns blazing.
Would you give him one of the 2 designated to return spots over Bourne or Tavai?
No.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I
would consider it with Bourne, I think. I understand yes, he has chemistry, a little bit of chemistry, I would say, with Drake Maye, but he understands the offense. He can be a locker room presence, but I feel like they sort of have that locker room presence nailed down with your Mac Hollins in the room. Bourne slowed down towards the end of last season. We know that. Yes, he's another year removed, but now he's banged up again. I'm a fan of Kendrick Bourne. I always have been. Do they really see him getting through this?
Look, here's my thing. If you need to emergency plug somebody in, and if there's one of those guys you trust to get ready at a moment's notice, like, how do you feel about Jalen Polk when he hasn't been on the field? He's missed 2 weeks of practice now?
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Plus 2 more weeks of the preseason. Plus he's going to have to miss 4. It's going to essentially have been 2 months since he ran a route in a competitive setting. And it would be the same for Bourne. I acknowledge that. I trust Bourne to get ready and be ready and stay ready for that kind of situation more so than I trust Jalen Polk.
And the way you attack those 2 guys too is Polk goes full-year IR. You're not going to full-year IR Kendrick Bourne. At that point, you're cutting him. You're not going to subject him to that. You're going to put him short-term and keep him here, or let him go on his way and find another place. So.
And
Taylor, you tried to cut in 5 times there. Go ahead.
Sorry. Just because with the Efton Chisholm status, we know now, but I was worried about, I've been, praising the receiver depth. If Kyle Williams and Efton Chisholm, for whatever reason, weren't able to play, we can say, Kendrick Bourne is an easy cut candidate, but that's because of the young talent and they have the veterans. If those 2 guys, for whatever reason, could not play for an extended period of time and you had Kendrick Bourne stashed away, that is your best case scenario because it's someone who has worked with Drake Maye at least and knows this offense pretty much inside and out. So, yeah, I agree. I think cutting him made sense, but I honestly did not remember the IR thing. So, yeah, that's him and Jelani Tavai, because we know Tavai probably has some kind of role in this defense. He did, because he was starting for a while early on, and then he got hurt.
He was playing a lot, and they also don't have a ton of depth there. So I think just on default, the other guy Taylor brought up.
Martin Mapu's back. If
Kyle Williams is dealing with a concussion and is maybe going to miss 3 games at that point, maybe he'd be a candidate. But I want him going. We've seen what missing the start of the season can do to a young receiver. We've seen it too many times. I want him going as soon as possible, even if it saves him a game. I'd still keep him on the initial roster. Any other thoughts on the wide receiver injuries before we get to some of what happened before practice today?
I'm good.
Does Kyle Williams potentially going on the short-term IR open up Javon Baker's spot a little bit more? Because you have to give the short-term to Williams. Bourne's out of the picture. Javon Baker ends up being that sort of special teams guy, at least to start the season. Then you can
probably,
if Marcellus Dial can make it as a gunner, Javon Baker can make it as a gunner, because Javon's been legitimately good So, like, I know we've talked about, like, how are they going to fit these two guys on? I don't think it's that complicated, and it hasn't been, I don't think, for a couple weeks. Like, once Javon established that he could make a special teams impact, that told me, yes, he's very talented. Mike Vrabel clearly likes him and is working with him and trying to get the best out of him today. He complimented, he keeps acknowledging that, Javon makes mistakes, but also talking about the fact that he blocked on the screen. He did have a nice rep as a gunner. Yep. So he's not a lost cause for them. So I think that it makes sense for him to be the last receiver on. And after Chisholm, I think for me, it was more like he had to play himself off the roster because he is a talented player. And for all the veterans you have, none of them are so good that I would want to subject Efton Chisholm to waivers, considering we know the dude's a dog and he's picked up this offense so quickly and been very reliable.
All right, let's hear from our friends at PrizePicks, and then I want to get into some of what was said before practice.
Let's do it. PrizePicks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. And all you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. So run your game all season long on PrizePicks. Like I said, it's the best way to get in on the action in more than 30 states across the country. And you can win money fast on the PrizePicks app. All you got to do, it's super easy to use. You create a lineup with pick 2 or more players to have more or less on at least more or less on a few player stats, and you have a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Right now, it's baseball season, but football season is just around the corner, and the PrizePicks app has preseason football locked in, so there's a Monday Night Football game on tonight, and you can make a PrizePicks lineup through that. So head over there right now, use code CLNS. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, it's code CLNS. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game.
So before practice, we heard from Mike Vrabel and Elliott Wolf, and honestly, I think there was more from Wolf than Vrabel in this one. Let's start small, build bigger. Said that he still thinks there's a role for Kyle Duggar on this team. Do you buy him? What do you think that role is, Taylor?
I still think like keeping him as close to the line of scrimmage as possible is the move. I asked Mike Vrabel in the joint practices if he'd consider moving Duggar to linebacker. He didn't say they were going to, but he said, they wouldn't rule it out, and they'll do what's best for the football team, do what's best for the player, all that. But it's such a unique situation. I always freeze like it's the first time anyone's ever brought it up, because you don't often have a player who's making this much money. And I know some people are making it seem like you could disagree with the deal at the time. People did. And I totally understood, but with the rebuild, it was like, all right, he is a leader. He's been a playmaker for you. I understand investing in him potentially getting better, but he got hurt. Like, you got an ankle injury. This isn't like an arm. Your ankle is fundamental as a safety to your range, to your change of direction. And he may never be the same player again. And not only that, but both Vrabel and Jabril Peppers have both mentioned that he missed the entire spring. And Elliott Wolf mentioned how important, I've been banging this bell too, that communication is so important at safety. It feels like they keep hinting that he's just not mentally where he needs to be. And that part, we can be right or wrong about it, but you can see with your own eyes that he is not moving the same way. He doesn't close down field as quickly when he's playing from depth. He doesn't, when you see him in center field, Jalen Hawkins, when he runs from center field, he may not make it to the receiver, but he's in the area. Duggar, unfortunately, looks slow, and he's not even close. It's so unfortunate, and I still do think if you want to keep him, with that linebacker level a la Marte Mapu, maybe that'll mitigate some of the change of direction issues because it's not a lot of space that he has to deal with. But even then, Duggar's never been great at getting depth in zone coverage. One of my pet peeves is it always feels like he lets those sail routes get behind him because he wants to try to make a play underneath. So if there's a role, I think it's, big nickel slot, linebacker, as, in your single high schemes, dropping him like we saw a lot against the Vikings. But does he play special teams? I don't know. He could, but is he going to want to be a special teamer and a backup?
$58 million special teamer.
Right. Like, I don't know. Like, these players have egos, whether he's healthy or not. Like, I don't know if he's going to be okay with that. So, sure, could he have a team? Could he have a role? Potentially. And I think that was a kind of a political answer from Elliott Wolf, because I just don't see it with the depth they have at safety relatively.
Mike.
Yeah, they're backed in a corner here with Kyle Duggar. I think that's exactly what that was, Taylor, was a political role. He's not going to – he was asked, and he's not going to sit there and say, yeah, no, we don't see it with Kyle Duggar, and we're going to either try and trade him or cut. He kind of had to say that. It is unfortunate because of how much money he makes. I wonder, we mentioned a potential trade possibility. I don't know what team's going to take on that contract unless they, the Patriots eat some there. And you mentioned the injury, Taylor, and the mental side of things. When you're half a step behind because, you're not 100% sure with your head, and then you're also half a step behind because of your foot, that's a full step behind, and you're just going to, be in no man's land. So it is a tough situation. I would tend to agree that, I didn't hate the contract when it happened. I just think it's kind of unraveled since then. And now they have a big decision to make, because on one hand, you stick to your guns. You say, no, he can have a role. You keep him. You don't really play him. And then you're just paying that money to a bench player who is he a special teamer? Is he a linebacker in some situations? That's up to them. I just don't see it. I do think it's a situation where you either try and trade him and get something for him and eat some money, or you eat the entire thing and just cut your losses and live to see another day at the safety position.
Taylor, you called it a political answer. I think that's the best way to put it. There's roles for everybody. That's why they're here. There's as much as we joke about a camp body, camp fodder, mm-hmm. right? There's some sort of role pictured for everybody. Now, some of them, we talk about this a lot with John Giles. John Giles' role, scout team wide receiver. You can do that from the practice squad, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a role for everybody. He said, if he's going to be here, they're going to have something for him to do. Just because there's a role for him here doesn't mean he's going to be here. So I didn't read too much into that in the sense that I didn't walk away thinking I left Kyle Duggar off my roster projection this morning. I shouldn't have done that. I was just kind of, all right. It wasn't impassioned one way or the other. I don't think they know yet. Probably because they want to see what they can get for him in a trade. And if they can do that, they'll do that and they'll decide from there. Speaking of trades, that was the other big thing from Elliott Wolf this morning. He was asked pretty much point blank, would you trade a first-round pick for a player that would help the team this year? I think the question was, in theory, would you borrow from the future to help this team? Which is slightly different. So Elliott Wolf said yes to that, which got a lot of headlines, as it should. Now, this comes as there's been reporting that the Bengals want a first-round pick for Trey Hendrickson. Maybe this is me being a pessimist. I don't know. I don't equate the two. I don't look at Elliott Wolf saying I would trade a first-round pick to help the team. I'd trade a first-round pick that's best for the football team to trading it for Trey Hendrickson, because he's not going to say no. What if the Cowboys call you and offer one first for Micah Parsons? Of course you're going to do that.
What else was he going to say? Honestly, right. I want to know that. How else is he supposed to answer that question?
We'd be open to any deal that makes sense for the football team.
Mm-hmm. Political answer. Again, it's just that was a smart
thing.
Right,
but I noticed I didn't say yes or no. I said, if I'm Elliott Wolf, we'd be open to any deal that we think helps the football team. So, which I think is exactly what he said after he said yes. Yeah. Maybe it was a Bill Lumberg, but I'm not putting too much stock into it. But that being said, if they think Trey Hendrickson's going to take them to another level, we have to take him at his word. He's not afraid to trade the pick. If somebody asks for that, it's maybe on the table. I don't think Trey Hendrickson's worth a first. I would move a second. I think the real question is if Keon White comes into play, and it's probably not a second and Keon White. Now you're probably talking about a third, or maybe it's a second for Keon, or maybe it's Trey Hendrickson and a third for Keon White and a second, whatever. Maybe there's a pick swap in there. Where are you on Trey Hendrickson? Would you move the first to get it done?
Trey Hendrickson, no. I don't. I just completely disagree with trading for him, period. I think that...
Really? So you wouldn't trade a second? What if it's just straight up a second for Trey Hendrickson?
No, because I don't think this defense or this team is a Trey Hendrickson away from making the playoffs or making a deep playoff push. I think they could be a Terry McLaurin away from making a deep playoff push, because that gives...
All right, we'll get to that. Don't get too far ahead.
I'm not getting ahead of myself. I apologize.
No, go ahead. I don't care. Go ahead.
But really, before Trey Hendrickson, I do not think... And you already have a crowded edge position. Could it be better with another certain premier player who's younger? Yes. But I am to trade capital away for someone who's not a pillar, who will be here for like 2 to 3 years. I don't really know that Trey Hendrickson's going to be a guy who's in your plans 3 years down the road. Maybe Terry McLaurin, because it's a position where there's a little less attrition. Those guys can last a little bit longer, and maybe you work out a deal where it's 2 years with like a third dummy or something like that. But Trey Hendrickson to me does not make sense. Caleb Chaison's having a really good summer. Harold Landry has consistently brought pressure, even though apparently he can't rush the passer anymore. If you look at PFF stats, which was a scheme thing. It was not a Harold Landry thing, by the way. Had the fastest get off of his career last year. And Keon White he is not having the breakout summer I was hoping he would, but he's not a bad player either. And you already have Elijah Ponder and Braden Swinson, developmental players, but guys who are probably going to make this team. That's 5 edge defenders right there on top of Anthony Jennings, on top of Truman Jones. Trey Hendrickson is obviously better than almost everybody I mentioned, but you have depth, and you don't need him to get you to some significantly further point. And I think giving away a day 1 or day 2 pick would be ridiculous for the relative return and how it would impact this football team.
I think Taylor's just worried about his guy Elijah Ponder getting bumped off the roster.
Call me out, man, because maybe.
Look, I told you today, I think you're more nervous about Ponder than you need to be. I'll just push back on a couple things you said. I think Trey Hendrickson is maybe the difference between them making the playoffs or not. I think they're 50-50 a playoff team without Trey Hendrickson. I think you put Trey Hendrickson on this team, you're now talking about a potential top 5 defense. It's super rare that regardless of what the offense does, it's incredibly rare for a top 5 defense not to make the playoffs. I believe the only team that's done that in the last 5 years is the Jets, and I think they've done it twice, but that's the Jets, so they are just by existence an outlier. Also, I think edge defenders are playing later into their 30s than wide receivers on a whole. I think there's more attrition at the wide receiver position. You look at the way production drops off for wide receivers at age 30, 31. There are certainly a few outliers, but it's pretty stark. Meanwhile, you see guys like Khalil Mack. You see guys like maybe Von Miller's not a good example. He was hurt for most of last year, but like you see guys like there was another one I had.
Khalil's a comparison. Being honest, though, Khalil is like an nth percentile athlete. If we're just being fair, he is not the standard. Just saying.
Yeah, but I remember there were a couple of guys who were like 31, 32 and still producing in the sack department last year.
But like, what if you can draft someone like that in the second round? Like, that's another thing. Like Terry McLaurin helps you score points, so and he might help you for a couple years. And I don't know. Part of this take is, if there's one position we heard about this coaching staff developing at a high level, it's defensive linemen and pass rushers, right? So if you have Terrell Williams and all these guys and Mike Vrabel, can you get that kind of play? Can you ultimately get that kind of player drafting a guy in the 4th round instead of the 2nd? I think maybe you can. Like, I think one in the 5th this year.
Right. So I trust the coaching staff. Like, I wouldn't trade the 1st. So just to be clear, I'm out on the 1st. Because that's where you get the real premier guys. If you want a guy like a Khalil Mack, like a Myles Garrett, like a Trey Hendrickson, right? I know those are sort of 3 different tiers of players, but that kind of guy, like that guy, you're probably getting in the 1st round. I don't think all those guys are 1st round picks. Yeah, they were. I think they were. Anyway.
Garrett, Hendrickson, and
we don't need to know that kind of stuff.
Khalil Mack.
Yeah, he was
Khalil Mack. They were all 1st round picks. Okay, yeah. I thought so. Like that's where you're getting that guy in the 2nd round.
Trey Hendrickson was a 3rd round pick.
That's what I thought. Okay, so. I trust them to find another Trey Hendrickson in the 3rd or 4th round. Like, I think that's one of the strengths of this coaching set. It's like the Patriots with corners. I never really worried about the Patriots passing on corners, when they had the under Bill and under that defensive coaching staff, because Mike Pellegrino would get you Malcolm Butler. Mm-hmm. He'd get you J.C. Jackson. He'd get you a lot of these undrafted guys that Jonathan Jones, obviously, right? Is it unfair based on what was talked about with this coaching staff to kind of apply that same logic to them for defensive linemen and pass rushers? And you look at what they've done. You look at Caleb Chaisson, and I know Caleb Chaisson was a 1st round pick, but this was a guy that had bust written all over him. And to your point, Taylor, he started to have a great summer. Braden Swinson, 5th round pick, starting to come along nicely. We think, Keon White has had a good start to camp. That's a guy that maybe they've unlocked and taken to another level. I think the evidence is there. Trey Hendrickson, I hate to call him a bridge player, but he's incredibly talented, is a hell of a bridge. Use 1 2nd round pick. He should get you at least 2 years. If you need that pass rusher in the 2nd round, you get him in 2027 instead of 2026. So I'm in on it. I understand there's some risk. I would do it. Mike, we'll let you go, and then we'll get to McLaurin.
Just a quick thought on the wrap on Hendrickson. him compared to the other two people we're going to talk about, he's like last on the list because of his age. Yes, he's put together 2 17.5 sack seasons the last 2 years. He's not on a decline. If anything, he's getting better with age.
Yeah. And by the way, he did that on a bad defense.
Right. So I just look at it as this team, yes, they're 50-50-ish, make the playoffs. Alex, you mentioned, I think we're all kind of there. But they're still not like Super Bowl contenders yet. I think Hendrickson is a player that a Super Bowl contender goes and gets and says, we need you for 2 years. Get us over the hump. Let's hoist the Lombardi. The Patriots are more like a 3 or 4 year team. Realistically, if people probably hate to hear it, but 3 or 4 years away, if all goes right to being a Super Bowl contender, at that point, Hendrickson is 34, either still not with the team or, on the downslope. So first or a second's pretty steep for him. But Elliott Wolf, they've been aggressive. They've been aggressive ever since he took over. They were in the Brandon Ayuk deal last year. They were involved there. They wanted to go get Calvin Ridley on a high deal. So I know we're going to talk receiver. They're not scared to at least throw their hat in the ring. And so it wouldn't shock me if they, if his comment, I know we don't want to look too much into it, and I agree. He kind of just said yes on a whim, for lack of a better term. But I do think that they're hungry to continue making this team better, both in the future and this year as well.
Mike, what you said is what scares me. I don't think the Patriots can afford to give up a first here, but do you know the Eagles have $30 million in cap space? Like they can part with a first.
Yeah.
Or one of those teams, I don't think they're going to trade him in the division or even in the conference. I don't think they trade him to like the Bills or the Chiefs, but the Commanders have some money. They can probably afford to part ways with a first round pick, like one of those teams jumping the Patriots. All right. You mentioned they've been aggressive for wide receivers. So Taylor, you would give up a first for Terry McLaurin. So I'm out on trading the first in general. Outside of one guy.
I don't want to trade the first. I don't want to trade the first. No first. No
Not
first.
for McLaurin?
No.
I thought you said you would.
No, not the first.
Okay.
I would trade a second because, I don't think that makes sense. If you're going to use a first,
I don't think it does either. Right. I don't think it does either.
Yeah.
But Mike, McLaurin for first?
He's 30 as well, right? 29, 30.
Yeah.
He's been Mr. Consistent. You do need help in the room. But again, we still mentioned 50-50 team. That's a 15 to 24, 25, that first round pick. That's valuable. That's not nothing. I lean no on McLaurin as much as put it this way. I don't think McLaurin's going to go for a first anyway. I think he's probably going to resign in Washington if they do end up trading him. It's more like a day 2 pick than a first rounder. But so no, I wouldn't trade it. I think it's too steep. But I would go for him with the second, and I would pay him what he wants on the contract because they desperately need help in the room still.
Yeah.
There's only one guy I'd trade the first for, and that's Micah Parsons. But the reality is Micah Parsons is probably going to go for 3 firsts, and I wouldn't do that if I'm the Patriots. No. They're too far away. 1 first, sure. I mean, if Jerry's really slipping like that.
Thread the needle. 2 first-round picks, Micah Parsons. He's 25, and he's the best defensive player in football. That's a building block.
Yeah, I think this might be my mystery box thing where I can acknowledge that I'm probably not right, but it makes me feel uneasy to trade 2 first-round picks for a guy.
I mean, here's the thing. That's your number 1 wide receiver and your linchpin pass rusher. Well, I guess you have the linchpin pass rusher.
How many times have those, Alex, you'll know this. How many times has a trade where somebody gave up multiple first-round picks worked for them? When they gave up a good player who continued to do well?
Very, very rarely, if any. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
I feel like it's always a cautionary tale. Always.
When the Niners did it for Trey Lance.
Yeah, that was great. And when the Broncos did for Russell Wilson.
Right.
Somebody had Bill Barnwell had this earlier. This is about Hendrickson. The last time a non-quarterback age 30 or over was traded for a first-round pick was 1994. Now, that doesn't apply to Micah Parsons. I thought the stat did, but whatever.
Does it say who the player was?
Chris Dolman. Falcons and Vikings.
Oh, legendary player Chris Dolman.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, yeah, he was traded for a first-round pick.
Both that's Chris.
All right, real quick, plugger of the day. I am going with Robert Spillane at the 2 interceptions. There weren't that many competitive periods. Taylor?
Hunter Henry. He was the only positive for me in the downfield passing game. I think he got 3 of their only successful downfield throws. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Hunter Henry because you picked Spillane.
He hadn't had one yet. Oh, we can double up. I feel like you guys forgot that we're allowed to double up, but we'll give one to Hunter Henry so he gets 1. Mike?
Can I pick Elliott Wolf for giving us stuff to talk about?
Sure, whatever.
Well, didn't you pick someone who wasn't on the team before, right?
I picked Vrabel once.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll give you Elliott Wolf.
Yeah, we'll give Elliott Wolf. He said some good things today. He gave us some storylines. He opened Pandora's box on this trade thing. So I'll give it to Wolf. They put together a good rookie class, as Will Campbell mentioned today. So we'll give that to Elliott Wolf.
Wish I got a chance to ask him a question. Never mind.
Well, you can ask what's his name, the assistant
Ryan Cowden.
Ryan Cowden. My brain's shutting off. We got to wrap this up. You can ask Ryan Cowden tomorrow. We'll be back tomorrow. I think it'll be all four of us. I'm pretty sure. As Patriots have their final practice of the preseason. In the meantime, subscribe to the Patriots Press Pass YouTube page. Find Taylor on CLNSmedia.com, Mike at SI, me at 985thesportshub.com. For Taylor Kyles and Mike Kadlick, I'm Alex Barth. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time.